Okay, the next tooth we're going to do is the upper first premolar, and to make it quicker we're going to use a mold that we fabricated from denture teeth. It's just a silicone mold, and we poured some wax into it, and we made some contacts right here. So as we can see, it's going to be too big, so we have to adjust it so that it fits with the opposing occlusion. So you can see that's a lot shorter than the contact. So what we have to do first is we're going to add some dilute so that the wax doesn't stick to the pontic area. Take some of that lube off because we don't need too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to soften the bottom. Take out some of the wax. Shorten up that tooth there. And we're going to soften it more. See it on the pontic area, and close down the opposing tooth. So now it kind of fits. I'm gonna add a little bit more since I think we shortened it a little too much. So let's add a little bit more wax. And let it sit a little bit so that it can harden slightly. Once it's a little hard, you can set it back again and see if it's maybe rough. Okay, so now it looks like it's good enough that it holds itself in. So you can just adjust it just like a denture tooth. Until it stays. So Then we're going to fix it to the model. I'm gonna fix it to K9. And add some wax where it's missing so that it's more stable. And we're gonna fix it to the second premolar abutment. Now we're gonna reinforce the lingual. This way there's minimal waxing involved in this particular tooth. If we didn't do this, we'd have to build all this wax, and then what would happen is we'd be wasting about another 20 minutes or so just building wax. This way, tooth is almost completely waxed. So we'll do a little bit more contour waxing. And then we're going to start the second premolar. Alright, so we'll wax the second premolar. So we're going to start with the cusp tip again, and we're going to bring it up to the level we need the tooth to be. Remember to take into account the curve of speed, so don't make it too high or too low. Try to make it exactly to match that curve. This is a bit too long, so I'm going to shorten it slightly. And then we're starting the mesial slope. And we're going to align the point angles with the first premolar. So this is the mesiobuccal cusp ridge. Mesio because it's a mesial, and because it's toward the face, toward the cheek. It was toward the face and the facial. So now we're relaxing the mesiobuccal line angle. And we're going to the distal buccal line angle. And then the distal buccal cusp ridge. And the distal buccal point angle right here. The next one's going to be the central lobe. You already waxed the mesial lobe and the distal lobe. So waxing the facial aspect, we have to align it with the first premolar. Make the central lobe a little bit more prominent. Since these teeth are not flat like the anteriors. If you notice, it's a little bit too short, so we're going to increase that cusp. And the distal point angle. And the medial angle. More cusp. And then a smooth local surface a little bit to blend those lines in. And at the same time we create a slight developmental depressions there. Next thing we're gonna do is the lingual. So we're going to start with the lingual cusp, and we need to make sure that lingual cusp goes to the proper place, which in this case will be the distal marginal ridge of the second premolar and the lower. Right in this spot, right here. This area. So we have to make sure that that's the direction it goes. So I know where to see. But it's going just about in the right direction. So now we need to build up this cusp tip until it just contacts that area. So we're building it up. As we see a little bit of a contact. So now we can stop building up the height, and we're going to move on to the mesial marginal ridge. Before it solidifies, check if there's contact, which there is, and there's a lot of contact right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to scrape some of the wax out from the occlusal so that we can make room for our occlusal anatomy. Also, you want to make sure that you have a fairly light contact. You don't want a contact that's too heavy, because then you have too much to grind after the casting. Now this lingual clasp here, as we notice, this goes slightly mesial, and we want to achieve the same thing here. We should be going slightly towards the mesial, so it should be reaching towards the mesial. That means the distal marginal bridge will be a little bit longer, and it will be going a tiny bit more diagonal than the mesial marginal bridge. So as we add, we check. Still a lot of space there, so we have a lot more height to cover. And remember to not overheat the wax. If we overheat the wax, obviously, we're going to run it all the way around the tooth, and we won't be able to build the height. Okay, so we check again. Looks like we're almost there. I can see a hint of a touch right here. So I'll just do a tiny bit more. And we're right there. That's right. So now we're going to fill in the lingual area just to make it more stable. To make it as smooth as you can, so you don't have to carve too much. Fill in the distal. just a little bit of this muzzle area before we start building up the occlusion. Get some more room. You want to leave enough room for the fish head. Now we're going to start adding add the buckle triangular ridge. And we'll add the lingual triangular ridge. And sometimes you may run it into the buckle, so we'll just take the Holland carver and then we melt it and round it so that we don't see the carving marks. So then we'll fill in these areas and do some secondary anatomy. Double check, make sure we don't overbuild it. Here we'll just smooth it out, flow it in. Double check. So we need to add a little bit more to the triangular ridge. And a little bit to the lingual triangular ridge. Make sure we have good contact. And we shall remove this and kind of do some refining. Okay, moving on to the molar. Start with the cusp tips. And then we start with the mesial cusp ridge. The mesial cusp ridge of the mesiobuccal cusp. Then the distal cusp ridge of the mesiobuccal cusp. Mesial cusp ridge of the distal buccal cusp. And the distal cusp ridge of the distal buccal cusp. And remember to put the point angles where the point angles of the adjacent teeth are. And we're going with the mesiobuccal line angle. And the distal buccal line angle. The mesiobuccal cusp is also the mesiobuccal lobe of the upper molar. So after we finish with the distal buccal line angle, we're going to build up the mesial lobe. After this solidified a little while, I'm gonna build up the distal lobe. Where the lobes join, you will have the buccal developmental groove. You have to remember that that groove doesn't go all the way down to the cervical area of the tooth. So when we join these together, where they meet is going to be the buccal developmental groove, which is only a groove at the beginning where the cusps meet, and then it kind of fades out into a depression. And then it completely rounds out about the middle of the tooth right here. So it's a little, as you get to the occlusal portion of the tooth, then it becomes more like a groove. Now some teeth they don't have a groove at all, and some teeth have just a depression. I prefer to make like a little bit of a groove here, and then as we go down, it becomes a depression. Let's take this out. Then we kind of fade it out towards the gingival area. Now we're more or less done with the buccal. So we're going to start on the lingual. Now the upper tooth is shaped like a rhombus, so we have to kind of stagger the cusps. So the mesiolingual cusp goes slightly distal to the mesiobuccal cusp. So the cusp tip will almost be right at the buccal developmental groove level, but just slightly forward. And we build up the cusp tip so that it goes towards the central pit of the lower. It could be at slightly more distal. The central pit usually is a tiny bit more distal than the center of the tooth. So we have to make sure that it goes towards that area. It's hard to see on here, but So we have to have a little bit of a contact, which we can see is right here. So after we reach a contact, we don't need to add anymore. Now we're gonna start working on the mesial cusp ridge of the mesiolingual cusp. Then we're going to go into the mesial marginal ridge. And we build it up until we get a slight contact with the mesiobuccal cusp of the lower tooth, the lower first molar. And just build up the rest of the marginal ridge to the same level as the second premolar. Now we're going to build the oblique ridge of the upper first molar, and that comes off the distal portion of the mesiolingual cusp. It kind of goes into a shape of a smile. Right there. So it goes from the mesial to the distal in a U shape. Make sure we get a contact point, which we have right here. Okay, the next step is the distal lingual cusp right here. Now the distal lingual cusp is the smaller of the lingual cusps on the upper first molar. And it goes directly into the distal marginal ridge. Remember not to make it too high, because they have to be at the same level with the adjacent tooth, which is the second molar. So now we see a little contact area right here. On the other side, we probably are not going to be able to achieve a contact, because we don't want to make that cusp too high. We want to keep it at a similar level as the mesial cusp of the second molar. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to fill up the lingual area. The mesial lobe is the biggest one, so we're going to fill that up first. We filled up the distal lingual noodle. Now we have the fish mouth constructed, so we're going to start adding the mesiobuccal triangular ridge. Oops. Okay, let's take that off. So, mesiobuccal triangular ridge. Distal buccal triangular ridge. And the distal buccal triangular ridge runs into the oblique ridge. So that kind of forms a transverse ridge right here, going from the mesiolingual to the distal buccal. Remember to make the bottom part, or the part closest to the central groove, wider than the cusp tip area of the triangular ridges. So now we're gonna go to the mesiolingual triangular ridge. And before the wax gets too hard, we're going to see where the occlusion is. Okay, we still don't have contact, so we're going to add some more wax. Now we have contact right here. Right there. Now we're we're going to add a little bit to the mesiobuccal triangular ridge to try to get contact there. Okay, so we have contact in that spot. Right there. So now we're gonna see if we can get a third contact. I think that will be too far away, so we still have 3 contacts. We have one contact point right there, right on the oblique ridge, one contact point right on the mesiobuccal triangular ridge. We have one contact point at the mesiolingual triangular ridge. And we have another contact point on the distal lingual cusp right there. So now we're going to puddle it in a little bit so that we don't have those very deep areas there. Here. And we have a void there. And we have another deep area here and a deep area there. So we're going to puddle it in, which means to kind of melt some wax in there so that it's not so deep. And that will also fill up this void here. We'll build a secondary ridge there, and then since that area was really big, we'll puddle that one in a little bit also. Remember not to heat up the wax too much because you ruin your occlusion. And here, just a little bit of wax right there. Go here is the mesiolingual triangular groove right there. So now we have the general areas where we want the developmental grooves, and we have the general form of the tooth. So since we have our contact points already, we want to try to avoid them when we're waxing. So we can remove this model now. It will make it a little easier on us to refine the grooves and the shape of the tooth. Okay, so if we notice here, our embrasure is closed, so we gotta open up this embrasure. Once that embrasure is open, we're gonna see the emergence of a rhomboid shape. Now if we notice this cusp here, the cusp tip is a little bit too far back or distal, a little too distal. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this more forward or mesially. Okay, that's a little bit better. So now we're going to work on the occlusal inversion a little more. Remember, the contact area shouldn't be too long. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, because we don't want it concave, we want it convex or straight. We'll work on the occlusal embrasure here. Don't make the occlusal embrasure too large, because then you're gonna have food getting trapped in there. Or it's there's also a possibility that you may lose contact. Or, of course, in this case it's gonna be a bridge, so if you make the contact too small, it's gonna have a weak spot where it joins the tooth adjacent to it. So the next step, we're gonna have to make the margins and the crowns very fine. So we're going to cut the wax subs and the interproximals so that we can remove each crown separately, and that way we can do some more refining on them. So we're using an interproximal saw. This is usually a dentist uses this to cut through amalgam when they're doing amalgam fillings, or when they're doing composite fillings too. So now we can remove this tooth, and as you can see, we have voided interproximals, which we have to fill. that's the mesial. Now we fill up the distal. Okay, now we can refine it a little more as far as the shape is concerned. So we're basically increasing the embrasures right here as we're rounding it off a little bit. So if you notice, this is a slight rhomboid shape. The mesiolingual cusp, we're going to flatten this area a little bit more, or maybe round it, just to make more of a rhomboid shape. So if we take away from here and we take away from here, we're increasing the rhomboidal shape, and we are also increasing the embrasure space. The more you round it, the more you increase the embrasure. So, but you have to make sure not to increase the embrasure too much, because then again food is going to get caught there. So we have nice neat margins now. There's absolutely no openings there. Make the surface nice and smooth. Make sure we include those developmental depressions there, so that we have a demarcation at the lobes. That's how most natural teeth are. So we'll put that back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the mesial of, actually no, we'll cut the distal of the first premolar, so that we can adjust the second premolar. So we're going to cut through the interproximal, then we shall remove it, but make sure you press down on the pontic, so that when you remove this tooth you don't break the pontic off the canine. So we're going to fill up voids. Usually I would prefer this wax to be a little lighter in color, but since it's such a long bridge, I need the wax that's really strong so that we don't get a problem with distortion when we invest it. So now we will start carving the tooth into its shape. Although we're pretty close, we still need some adjustment. Have to be careful with the margin so we don't chip it or abrade it. But we still need it to be perfectly closed. Increase the embrasure a little bit, decrease the size of the contact area, increase the embrasures. And remember to tilt the lingual cusp a little bit mesially. So if you notice, this one is kind of in the middle. So what we want to do is we want to move it a little more mesially, because it wants to reach to a specific spot in the opposing tooth. So that's where we need to put it. Let's double check and see if we moved it enough. Okay, so right now it's pointing in the right direction. Let's see here. We're going to try to take a look. Right there. Let's see here. Okay, so let us try to see the placement of the cusps. Okay, so the cusp of the second premolar will occlude right in the distal fossa, right here, of the second premolar on the mandibular. The first premolar will occlude in the distal fossa, right here, of the first premolar of the mandibular tooth. So since that is done, now we're going to move on to the pontic. But before we move on to the pontic, we are going to need to attach the pontic to the premolar, the second premolar right here. So we will attach it. And we're going to carve down the first premolar so that it's gonna be at the same level as the second. We don't want to make it too wide because then there's going to be too much occlusal force on it, and we want to make sure the occlusal forces are minimized. So now we're going to cut through the mesial portion right by the canine of the first premolar. So we'll have to be careful through, and we can remove the second premolar along with the Pontic. So now we're going to smooth out the connection areas, and we're going to smooth out the interproximal where we cut. And we can adjust the embrasures on the interproximals. This is the distal embrasure that we're adjusting right now. So we want to make sure that we have a nice deep embrasure where the contact is a minimum of 2 millimeters this way. This is a little bit more, but it's fine. As long as you have enough embrasure space. If the embrasure is not there, then we're going to see the tooth is not separate enough. So the embrasures will make the teeth look separate. So the deeper they are, the more separate they look. But we have to consider the strength of the joint. Oh, see, we broke it off, which happens. In that case, we simply put this back, put the Pontic back into its exact place, then we have to return it to the articulator and make sure that it's back in its original spot. And then we will readjust it. And we will join it again. Once it solidifies, we take it off and we rejoin it at the lingual. And then we wait until it cools down. As we wait, we notice that this point angle here is way higher than this. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise this point angle a little bit. And we're going to adjust the cusp tip slightly mesial and a little bit higher. Since we see that this point of the molar is higher, we're going to raise this slightly to make a nice line between the canine and the molar. Nice progressive line. We can probably raise the mesial point angle on the first premolar and cusp tip a little bit. Okay, so the next tooth we'll cut out is the canine. And we shall remove that, keeping down the pontic. So now we're adjusting the proximals, smooth them out, making sure that the contact areas are wide enough and or they're not too wide. We have to make sure that the margins are sealed perfectly, and obviously this one isn't. If we notice, we can see a little bit of an opening right there. See how it doesn't quite open right there. Okay, so now we're gonna melt the wax in there so that we can close it up. Sometimes what happens is as we are waxing, the wax will shrink away from there. So you have to remelt it into that area. And since you're melting a much smaller amount of wax, it doesn't shrink as much. Now very lightly go over it with the Holland back carver. Okay, let's put it back. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, it looks pretty good. Got the contacts, okay. So moving on to the lateral incisor. Okay, so we got quite a nice void in there, so we'll have to fill that up. Since we left a lot of the dipping wax still on there, we will probably have some openings that we need to fill up. Very lightly start taking away from the margin. Don't want to press too hard, because once you get down to stone, you don't want to start scraping away the margin. Very carefully. Once the wax start getting thin, you will notice it, so you'll know when to stop. See how the wax is getting thin on the margin? So we just keep going, but very slowly. And just keep going around. And blending all the rough areas and the sharp areas. Surround it nicely. So now I'll put it back and take out the central. the same here. So find areas that are missing. Bring out areas that are open. Okay, so we have the wax ups done. Now we're going to join them together. Let me just double check the margins on here a little bit more. Right. Alright, so let's join them back together. they don't come off easily before you join them. Then when you take them off, try to take them off in one piece, they might break. So let's make sure this one comes off. Okay. And make sure more comes off. We have to make sure there's nothing at all underneath here, because if there is, the die is not going to go down all the way. So to make sure everything's clean and everything comes off. And then we join the rear portion together. So when you join it together, go into the embrasure and kind of melt the wax, at the same time placing one drop of wax within there. Now on the occlusion you have to be super careful, because this contact there, so we'll have to melt it in a little bit, and then once it solidifies, we go in with the Hollenbeck carver and we're going to make a nice little line so that it looks like separate teeth. So now we can take off this portion and this portion separately. So let's see. Okay, this one is off in one piece. And this one is off.